Now, as you know, I tend not to get into football, but having watched Manchester United against Swansea yesterday, I have to say that any team that brings on Marianne Fellaini looking to win a game, oh my god, he must be the worst Premiership player ever. He's absolutely useless. He's one-dimensional, he's one-paced, he can't head, he can't tackle, he can't pass, he can't do anything. He's absolutely useless. Anyway, back to something slightly more important. PM, our generational struggle against a poisonous ideology. The West is embroiled in a generational struggle against a poisonous brand of Islamic extremists that will bring terror to the streets of Britain unless urgent action is taken to defeat it, David Cameron warns today. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, the Prime Minister says the world cannot turn a blind eye to the creation of an extremist caliphate in the heart of Iraq. Having read this article, the thing that struck me the most was that it's obvious that history is simply repeating itself. This is Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda all over again. I remember thinking back in the day that the political establishment tried to scare us shitless about Al-Qaeda so that it appeared that there was an Al-Qaeda operative under everybody's bed. Now, obviously the political establishment have finally realised that too many people have become aware over the years that the West have been running Al-Qaeda for years. They've been growing and shipping their drugs for years and generally ensuring that they upheld the bogeyman status for everybody to be scared of. So, they're now telling us to be scared of ISIS, IS, ISIL, whatever they're called. I've said this in a few videos recently, and I'll say it again. If we had voted to help the rebels in Syria, then we would have become ISIS's, if there is such a word, Air Force, and fighting alongside ISIS. Do you remember what Michael Gove said to MPs who voted against allowing David Cameron to support ISIS? He shouted at MPs who voted against another slaughter made in London, "You're a disgrace," because they didn't vote to allow David Cameron to support and fund and arm ISIS officially. I would suggest that it is Michael fucking Gove who is the disgrace. Cameron gibbers on for a while in this article, and it's clear that he's going to use the threat of ISIS, as they did with the threat of Al-Qaeda, to introduce even more Orwellian measures in the UK to try and stop the threat of ISIS, the terror group that David Cameron wanted to support just over a year ago. I'm sure the Snoopers Charter will now become high on the agenda, and we will be told that the government simply have to know everything about us, everything we do, every web search, every text, everything we do electronically to keep us safe. How long before we have to show our papers in the UK because of the threat of ISIS that David Cameron wanted to support? Politics is fucked up. But David Cameron won't ever get questioned about why he wanted to support ISIS in Syria. Never! No journalist has a pair of bollocks big enough to ask him. They all ask milquetoast pathetic questions. 99% of journalists are a disgusting, unpatriotic bunch of repeating go-along-to-get-along arseholes. We are in the middle of a generational struggle against a poisonous and extremist ideology which I believe we will be fighting for the rest of my political life, says David Cameron in this article. Believe it or not, Cameron is not talking about the banks. But he could very well be if you listen to what he's actually saying. I wonder who will have a greater effect on people's lives when the next financial collapse happens. ISIS or the banksters? Because we will have to bail out the banks when the next financial collapse happens. The government policy towards the banks will kill many, many, many more people than ISIS will in this country, I surmise. But you can't force people to live in a creeping police state because of the banks now, can you? But you can because of an Islamic terror group. And that's exactly what Cameron's doing. Cameron supports the banks. Cameron wanted to support ISIS. We must never, ever forget that Cameron wanted to support ISIS. This gives you an insight into the geopolitics that play out at that level. These people will literally slit their own grandmother's throat to get what they want.